Hi guys, and welcome to Terminal Velocity. Today is the 5th episode of the Zelda Versus series, with Link's Awakening versus the Wind Waker. Just a quick reminder, only a few percentage of you guys watching are subscribed, so if you like my content, it would be really appreciated if you could click that subscribe button and like my video. Also, this video contains some spoilers from The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. So if you haven't finished that game, you might want to wait until you watch this video, or just skip to the end. The first category we have for today is creativity. While both of these games have a lot of creativity, from Link's Awakening being the first handheld Zelda game, and Wind Waker cel-shaded and interesting story and characters. But I think that the Wind Waker has a little bit more creativity, even though Link's Awakening is a very creative game. So I think that the point goes to Wind Waker in this category. The next category we have is combat. Since the Wind Waker is a 3D Zelda title, it has a serious advantage to the 2D Link's Awakening. However, Link's Awakening has a great variety of items that help as during combat, but still the Wind Waker gets the point in this category. The next game we have is exploration. While the Wind Waker is probably second in terms of exploration only to Breath of the Wild, due to its great open seas, Link's Awakening has insane exploration for being a Game Boy game. However, I'm not rating it on that, so the Wind Waker still gets another point in this category. The next category that we have is items. The items in the Wind Waker are pretty average for a 3D Zelda title, but the items in Link's Awakening are really great, and there are even some new ones that are very interesting, such as being the first game to use bomb arrows, as well as the Rocks Leaf being the first 2D game where you can jump. So for that reason, I have to give the point to Link's Awakening. The next category we have is enemies. While the Wind Waker does have some pretty good enemies, Link's Awakening has insanely good enemies, especially for being a Game Boy game. It has really great overworld enemies, as well as good bosses, which I'll cover in one of the later sections. But the enemies in Link's Awakening are really great and have really interesting different aspects, especially the ones that are from the Mario series, like the Goombas and the Koopa Troopas and Piranha Plant Flowers. The next category we have up is dungeons. While the Wind Waker does have pretty good dungeons, including the Earth Temple and the Wind Temple, as well as Hyrule Castle, Link's Awakening might have the best 2D dungeons out of any game. It has amazing dungeons that are really well thought out, and especially with the addition of the 2019 remake's Dungeon Maker, this game has a serious advantage, and so it gets the point in this category. The next category is characters. While Marin might be one of the best written characters in the whole Zelda series, overall, the Wind Waker has much better characters than Link's Awakening, which gets it the point in this category. The next category we have is story. While The Wind Waker does have a very impressive story for a 3D title. Link's Awakening has a really great story as well. And despite being in Nintendo's "it was all just a dream" phase, it still is a really great story that is awesome every time you play through it. And it's really creative. So I think that Link's Awakening gets the point in this category. Link's Awakening has a very, very good story, and is one of the most emotional games in the entire series. And while The Wind Waker also has very great emotion and dramatic scenes, Link's Awakening easily tops it, and as one of the most emotional games out of all of the series, especially the ending. And while Wind Waker has a lot more character development, which adds to the emotion, it's fairly easy to tell that Link's Awakening is one of the most emotional games in the entire series, with a very, very sad and depressing tone, while The Wind Waker, for the most part, is more happy and uplifting. The next category we have is progression. While The Wind Waker is not bad at progression in any way, it is not as great as Link's Awakenings, which has very great progression from the first dungeon, Tail Cave, all the way to the ending. It steadily gets harder and harder as you go on, and starts out easy for beginners, and at the end it's a lot harder, which is why I think Link's Awakening gets the point in this category. The next category we have is side content. And while Link's Awakening does have a good amount of side content, especially in the 2019 remake, The Wind Waker has much more side content, which easily gives it the point in this category. The next category we have is music, and while this is a very, very even category between these two games, and if the 2019 remake had not come out, this would easily have gone to The Wind Waker. But with Link's Awakening 2019 remake's new orchestrated pieces, makes this a very close match. While The Wind Waker has more light-hearted songs such as Great Sea, Windfall Island, and Dragon Roost Island, Link's Awakening has more sad songs such as The Ballad of the Windfish, Tal Tal Heights, as well as a few of the dungeon themes. Surprisingly, I actually think the 2019's new remakes of the music make it a little bit better songwriting and better thought out than The Wind Waker's music, which gives it the point in this category. The next category we have is bosses. While Link's Awakening does have pretty good bosses, they're a lot more basic and not as creative as The Wind Waker's amazing variety of bosses, which gives Wind Waker the easy point in this category. Also, Link's Awakening has the glowfish dude, I forgot his name, and he might be one of the worst bosses in the entire Zelda series. The next category we have is art style. While Wind Waker is very well known for its cartoony art style, which is very interesting and makes it feel really timeless, Link's Awakening and the new 2019 remake has a very cool looking toy-like feel that honestly makes it look a little bit more like better looking, as well as having more solid graphics and a more interesting and creative art style. The next category we have is world. While Link's Awakening does have a very creative world with different characters and places. Wind Waker is far more expansive, and it has more secrets hidden throughout it, especially the different islands you can find with different side quests and lore, this gives Wind Waker a clear advantage in this category, which ends up in it taking the point. The next category we have is difficulty. While Link's Awakening, especially the Game Boy and Game Boy Color versions, are definitely not the easiest games in the series, and they have one of the best progression. The Wind Waker, at its hardest point, is significantly harder than Link's Awakening at its hardest point, because Link's Awakening at the ending, it isn't too hard, although it is well progressed from the beginning, while the Wind Waker is hard a lot of most of the time, which gives it the point again in this category. Alright, it's all tied up 8-8, and this is the final category, replay value. And this might end up being one of the closest Zelda verses I've done so far, and maybe even the closest one out of the whole entire series. Anyway, on to replay value. The replay value of the Wind Waker is very, very high because of its great 3D graphics and story that's really also really good too. However, since Link's Awakening is a little bit shorter and a little easier and more fun to do, it gets the point in this category, and surprisingly gets an upset against the Wind Waker as a more balanced game, and progresses it to the next game in this Zelda vs. series. There's no way that I ever would have thought that Link's Awakening would be a more balanced game than the Wind Waker, but apparently it is. So thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to tell me in the comments below which of these two games you think is better. Be sure to watch my other content and consider subscribing. Bye guys. See you later.